All right, let's look at another smashing attacking game by the great Alexander Alekhine. In this game, Alekhine had white, and his opponent was a great player in his own right named Hans Fahrni, who wrote a few chess books in German on the endgame. And I think, unfortunately, this game in which he loses is probably one of his most famous contributions to chess. But all right, so Alekhine plays e4, and here black adopts the French defense with e6, and there is a really interesting variation in this game, which would later be named after Alekhine. I believe it's named the Alekhine Shatar attack. d4, d5, knight c3, knight f6, I'm sorry, not e5. e5 would be sort of playing in the more classical French. This bishop g5 move is the hallmark of this variation, the Alekhine Shatar attack. And now after bishop e7 comes e5, kicking the knight away. And then here is really the key idea. Rather than exchange off bishops or retreat, white gives away a pawn with h4. Now, it's not just any pawn, of course, it's the rook's pawn. And so by sacrificing this pawn, Alekhine is opening up the h-file. This is significant. If you look at black's position and you think about his development so far, the queen side is entirely undeveloped. And if black's king is going to castle, it would probably happen on the king side. So by opening the h-file, already for the price of a pawn, white is getting a huge kingside initiative. After bishop takes, pawn takes, queen takes. The knight can develop with tempo. But rather than playing knight f3, which would be a natural move, another sort of maneuver that is part of this opening variation is knight h3 here. And the key difference is that from the h3 square, the knight will be able to reach f4, where it will have all kinds of attacking ideas in the center, or possibly pivot over here to apply pressure to the squares f6 and g7. So f4, a very interesting square for the knight to be placed on. And after the queen retreats, it reaches that square immediately. Okay, and so now knight f8. This move, we could say, is something of a strategic error. It would make more sense for black to continue developing with something like knight c6, maybe slowing down white's attack by putting a little pressure on this d4 pawn. Knight f8 does have some logic to it, though. If you're thinking from black's point of view, okay, white's going to get a big kingside attack. Maybe if I play something like knight f8, then I can hold the h7 pawn. Maybe someday I can play knight g6 to hold the position together. So you can understand why someone might play it when they're facing this kind of pressure. But simply knight c6 is a better move. Okay, queen g4, attacking the g7 pawn. And here, black plays f5. Alekhine captures en passant, looking to open lines. And now the pawn is forced to capture here. Queen takes looks like it might be a tempting move, but it would run into a tactical idea. See if you can spot the shot. Knight takes d5 is a very strong move, and it leaves black with not very many good options. First, if pawn takes knight, we have queen takes bishop check, which will just be devastation. Next, the b7 pawn will fall, and possibly the rook or additional material. And if after knight takes d5, if the pawn does not capture, well, the white knight is threatening to take on c7, which would be a problem, and of course it's also attacking the queen. So something like queen d8 would respond to both of those threats. But now white could simply start probing with something like queen h5 check, or possibly even bishop b5, I think would be a very strong move here. It looks like this is a pawn fork, but this pawn fork does not actually work because black's king side is falling apart. This rook is under threat, and even if black were to, let's say, remove the knight, leaving this bishop under attack, after the rook falls, taking this bishop would be a bit of a positional problem. After rook takes h7, black's pieces would just be completely dominated. And yeah, for all of these reasons, after the capture en passant, black had to capture back with their pawn. And so now, Alekhine castles, queenside. And the idea here, well, there I think are a few ideas. One is it brings this rook into the attack, but it also reintroduces knight captures d5 as a threat. Queen e7 sort of stopped that idea temporarily because pawn takes knight would have been a check back here. If you imagine knight takes pawn, then pawn takes would be check. This would not work. This would be great for black. However, instead of knight takes pawn there, castling it renews that threat and many of the tactics that we saw before. So black plays c6 to overprotect this pawn. Okay, now Alekhine plays rook e1, a logical move, simply putting more pressure on the e file where the queen and king still are stuck in the middle of the board. And king d8 is not a very pretty move to play, but okay, you know, Fahrni is trying to get his pieces off from the e file. Rook e8 is certainly a threatening move, particularly when played by someone of Alekhine's attacking reputation. Rook h6, bringing another piece into the attack. And here, e5 is played. Now, when I was first looking at this game, I thought, you know, it looks like black is almost about to solve all of their problems here, right? I mean, okay, this pawn is attacking the knight. Of course, the pawn on e5 is pinned for now. But the bishop is going to be in the game soon enough. And if black can get away with something like maybe bishop e6 and knight d7 and king c7, then they could consolidate. Alekhine does not give him time to do this, though, and plays the move queen h4. Queen h4 threatens pawn takes pawn, I think, but also is stepping the queen over to the h-file, introducing some other attacking ideas. Knight d7. Here, knight bd7. Here, there are lots of good moves for white, but I like Alekhine's choice because of how straightforward it is. Bishop d3, simply completing development and bringing another piece to the attack. My engine really likes this move. Knight c takes d5, which is flashy and and quite nice. The idea is after pawn takes, knight takes d5, we're getting two pawns for the knight, but black's pieces are entirely paralyzed, and by opening up more lines to the king, it leaves black with very few options. The queen is hit, and if she runs away to, say, for instance, f7, well, we can play this move knight takes f6 because we have that square under control, getting a third pawn for the piece and just ripping open all of the lines to the king. However, I like this move that Alekhine played, which was, bishop d3, bringing another piece to the attack. It's a very logical move. Here, Fahrni plays e4, looking to open up the diagonal for his own bishop, but also to shut this one out of the game. And here, it's important to note that the rook on e1 is still pinning this pawn to the queen, so there's no immediate threat to the bishop. So Alekhine takes this this turn to make a subtle improvement. He plays this move queen g3. The thing that I like about this is it's clear when he played this move that he was intending to sacrifice on e4. When the knight and bishop are no longer on the third rank, the queen all of a sudden has access to the queen side, which will be important when these pawns are no longer on the board. So black plays queen f7, removing the queen from the e-file and now threatening pawn takes bishop. But of course, Alekhine was planning to sacrifice his minor pieces for this pawn anyway. So after bishop takes, knight takes, we have 2 pawns for the bishop. But now these lines are wide open, and these knights have really devastating attacking radius all around black's king. Rook g8 is an attempt to bring another piece to the defense, but simply queen a3. This move is, I think, the most interesting attacking and subtle move in the game. I think a lot of players maybe would have played something like queen h4 there. Sort of a logical human-looking move. But this is so much stronger, but harder to see, because it introduces a new avenue of attack along this a3 f8 diagonal. Black plays queen g7, but it's already too little too late. Knight d6, and now this monster is threatening to crawl in to the e8 square, which can't really be prevented. After knight b6, knight e8, and now the threats around black's king are simply too numerous to defend. The best here for black would be something like queen d7, but even that would not hold the position. Queen f7 is what was played, and now, very simply, there's a checkmate in 3. See if you can spot it. So it begins with the relatively obvious check queen d6. And now if black were to block with their bishop, well, we have a checkmate in 1, just queen c7. The same would be true if either knight were to block. So after this check, in order to prolong the inevitable, black could play queen d7. Here simply queen takes f6 check. Again, the knight on e8 is controlling c7, so queen e7 is an only move. But now just queen takes queen, game over. I thought this was a really beautiful game. I like how by sacrificing this h-pawn in the opening and bringing the knight to f4, Alekhine was able to just explode. Like, it was an incredibly powerful attack, and black never even had a chance to complete the development on the queen side. All right, I hope you enjoyed this game as much as I did.